Let's bow in, everyone. So welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. We're working our way through Francesca Fremantle's Luminous Emptiness. And tonight we are beginning the chapter Wrathful Compassion, and we'll see how far we get. A lot in here. Just to go over a little prelude, to put this all in perspective. The term bardo is very important in this discussion. Bardo literally means in Tibetan from to. So its meaning is interval, a space between. There are 6 main bardos in the experience of a sentient being, and many, many small ones, infinite number really. But the 6 main bardos, there are the 3 bardos of life. One is the bardo of life, which goes from the time you take birth until the time when you contract the condition that's going to end your life. That's the bardo of life. And within that bardo, there are 2 main sub-bardos. One is the bardo of dreaming, which should be self-explanatory. It's when you sleep at night and you have a dream. I'm not sure if it includes daydreams. I don't think it does. And the other one, bardo of dreaming, is the bardo of meditation, the space when you start meditating to when you end meditating. Those are within the bardo of life. And then there are the bardos of death. And there are 3 main bardos of death. So altogether we get 6, right? And the 3 main death bardos are what's called the bardo of pain, sometimes called the painful bardo of dying, which begins the moment that you contract the condition or you initiate the condition that's going to kill you, and it ends at the moment of your death, which is something to be discussed, what that actually is, the moment of death. That's the bardo of dying, and it includes descriptions of the falling away of the body, which includes 6 different aspects. The falling away of corporeal form, the falling away, what are they, Michael? Why am I blanking this? Corporeal form.
Just remember the dissolution of the elements.
Yeah, the dissolution of the elements. Basically materiality. And then the falling away of the fire that heats us, the falling away of the wind, which moves us. All of these are the falling away of the body. And there's one other that I'm leaving out. So that's one of the main bardos of the bardo of death, the falling away of this body. And it ends, you would think, in typical Western fashion, with the end of your life. But the falling away of consciousness is not the end of the falling away of this of life, because even after the mind, the thinking mind, with its emotions and thoughts, falls apart and dissolves, nonetheless, consciousness itself, awareness, continues for a while. And it varies, the description, depending on the sect, whether you're Gelugpa, Nyingma, Kagyu, or Sakya, what comes next and when. But generally what comes next is that after the person actually dies altogether, you see, physical death in this scheme is not the end, is not the full end of death. Beyond that, then there is the mind that has to unwind. And when the mind unwinds, then they talk about the individual being fully dead. And at that point, the individual, the consciousness, still continues. The consciousness is beyond birth and death. And it goes on into the next bardo, beyond the bardo of dying, which is called the bardo of dharmata, which is really our subject tonight. Sometimes dharmata is translated, well, it literally means dharma. You know what dharma means, it has many meanings. It means reality, and ta is a nominative, so it's the dharma-ness, the bardo of dharma-ness, the interval. And during this bardo, one encounters this world in a different way, totally different than you did as a living human sentient being. And eventually that bardo ends, and you go into the last of the death bardos, which is translated sometimes as the bardo of dying, the bardo of experience. It has lots of different translations, which is one of the things that makes this a little bit confusing, so we have to keep it straight. And in this bardo, you see yourself as first, this is so the famous 49-day bardo of the being reborn. Now, 49 days is not literal. That's sort of figurative talk, because there are no days. We're beyond sun and moon. We're beyond the passing of 24 hours. That doesn't happen, except in the mind of the person who's experiencing it to some degree. And so it's supposedly they say 49 days, but that's really figurative. And in it, you have the body of a child. You see yourself as you were first when you were a child in this life now, and then in the last part of the bardo of dying, bardo of becoming, the 49-day bardo, you see yourself as the child you're going to be. A child, they say, at about the age of 6 or 7. And this is a very chaotic experience, very changeable. It's like a dream at night. You know, one minute you're in New York City, the next minute you're in Zanzibar, because it's all mental, and it changes very rapidly. And this is the bardo of the painful bardo. This is the bardo of becoming, the 49 days before your rebirth, and it ends. Supposedly, figuratively speaking, the person looks down and sees if they're going to be reborn as an animal or as a human being. They see their parents copulating. And supposedly, if the woman is in love with the man, then the person is going to be reborn as a female. And if it's vice versa, if the man his love for the woman is greater, then the person is going to be reborn as a male. But this is all figurative speech. Basically, you're going to take form through birth, coming out of this bardo. If you are going to be born in the bardo of a animal or human being, and hopefully you're going to be born as a human being if you're going to be reborn in one of the 6 realms. You remember the 6 realms of the God realm, the jealous God realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the realm of the hungry ghosts, and the hell realm. And of those, the one that is most desirable, none of them are desirable. You don't want to be reborn in the realms, really. But if you are, the one that is the best one to be reborn in is the human realm, because from the human realm, you can achieve enlightenment and freedom from the realms altogether. These realms go to make up samsara, suffering, confusion. So, the description of in the chapter that you have nominatively read for tonight, perhaps, Francesca's chapter 14, Wrathful Compassion, you were reading part of that. That is taking place in the bardo of, what's it called? The bardo of dying, the bardo of dharmata, the bardo of reality, before you move into the bardo of becoming and being reborn. The bardo of dharmata, let's talk about that for a minute. When a person dies, most people have not prepared. They have not meditated. Meditation is the real ultimate preparation. The more you meditate, the more prepared you are. But the vast majority of people in the cosmos aren't meditating. And so when they die, when they're in the bardo of dying, the 49 days, I mean, not the 49 days, excuse me, the painful bardo of dying, when the body falls apart, they really don't see the bardo of dharmata. They go through it, but it's so fast because they haven't meditated that they don't even know that they're going through it. They just blip through it into the bardo of becoming, where they're a child and they're seeking rebirth, and they will be reborn. So most individuals don't experience the bardo of dharmata. They do in a flash, you have to, but it's kind of like just stepping through a doorway. They don't see it, they're not aware of it, and they certainly don't realize its implications. However, if we have practiced, and if especially you have studied these bardos, especially the bardo of dharmata, you have a chance of hanging out for some period of time in the bardo of dharmata, the bardo of reality. And in fact, you can, if you've really practiced and been a very good practitioner, achieve awakening, enlightenment, liberation in the bardo of dharmata, and not go on to the painful bardos of living and dying beyond that. You will simply go off, you can go off into enlightenment anywhere. It just gets progressively harder. Once you've entered the bardo of this life and taken birth as one of the 6 beings in samsara, it's very difficult to achieve enlightenment, although it's possible. You can do it as a human being. It just takes a lot more work, dedication, and good fortune. But in the bardo of dharmata, if one has trained and can rest in the bardo of dharmata, it's much more likely than in any of the other bardos that you will achieve full awakening and liberation. So there are actually, in this progression, there are 2 main inflection points. One is as you are dying and your physical body, you're still in the bardo of having a physical body, and as that body is dying, and then after the body dies, the mind shuts down, and there's a description of that, which we'll get to at some point, of how the mind shuts down. And at the point where the mind shuts down completely, there is the opportunity to achieve complete enlightenment. Most people do not, because they simply haven't trained and don't recognize the chance. And they move on into what we're talking about tonight, the bardo of dharmata, the bardo of reality. Any questions at this point? This is sort of the overview. What do you think, Michael? Did I cover it? You want to add anything?
I think that's pretty good. That's clear.
Okay. So we'd like to achieve enlightenment at the moment of the complete physical death of John or Lodro or Danielle or whomever. You'd like to achieve enlightenment then, but if you don't, then you move on into the bardo of dharmata, which you will experience either as almost nothing if you haven't trained, or if you've done a lot of meditation practice and studied, you can experience the bardo of dharmata, as we're going to be talking about it now, to whatever degree. Each one of us will experience it to a different degree for a different length of time, with different depth and profundity. So tonight we're really talking about the bardo of dharmata, and especially there are 3 main aspects to this, the bardo of reality, that if you're awake in the bardo of dharmata, you will experience them. You might not, you might only experience one. You might go through it so fast you barely can, you blink and it's gone. there are all these different possibilities. But the full experience is composed of three different aspects. One is that you see samsara. You see it as lights. And these lights are soft, easy to look at. The light of the God realm is a soft white. The light of the jealous God realm, I think, what is it, a soft red. The light of the human realm, I think, is soft blue, and so forth. And so these are very easy to be in the jealous God, the hungry ghost realm, soft yellow. And the hell realm, I think, is soft black or gray. And because they're soft, they're easy to go towards. And the temptation is that here we are in the Bardo of Dharmata, and you see these soft lights, and you could be drawn to them. That's dangerous, because then you're being drawn to confusion and suffering and unenlightenment, samsara. The other things you're going to see, though, are the enlightened world. And those are hard to look at. Hard to look at, why? Because they are so brilliant. Brilliant and bright, hard, but make your eyes hurt. And there are two aspects to the enlightened world: the peaceful deities and the wrathful deities. And of those two, the peaceful deities are the hardest to look at because they are so brilliant. And what you want to do is go towards the peaceful deities or the wrathful deities. The wrathful deities are easier to look at. Not easy, and they're fierce, and they're scary looking, but they're much easier to look at than the peaceful deities, because the peaceful deities are so brilliant that they blind your eyes. And the constant warning is, do not drift down toward the soft lights of the six realms, because then you're going to be reborn in samsara, and it's very difficult to get out of that. So you avoid that, even though it's tempting. So in the vision of the Dharmata that you are going to experience, if even just for a finger snap, or you may be in there for a long time, exploring. In there, there are the peaceful deities and the wrathful deities. And the peaceful deities are Buddhas, and male and female. And there are 42 so-called peaceful deities, and there are the wrathful deities, so-called 58. You can go on the internet and Google Herukas. Heruka is another name for the wrathful deity, Heruka, Heruka. You can Google it, but you don't get a lot. On the images that you get when you Google them on the internet are really disappointing. I've given you two that I have here on my wall. I'll tell you what they are. One of them, the first one, is an image of Yamantaka, and he is bordered by orange silk. And you have the picture of him that I've sent to you in chat. He's bordered by orange silk, and he has a bull's head. He has multiple arms, multiple legs. He's in union with a female consort. His name means conqueror of Yama. Yama is death. Yama is the deity that represents death. And if you look at this tanka, you'll see down below, at the bottom of the tanka, a smaller figure with a bull's head, and that's Yama. And Yamantaka is huge by comparison and above him, because he rules Yama. Yamantaka, that's what it means, conqueror of death. He wears the head of a bull, which is the symbol of ignorance and stupidity, and he wears it in mockery of ignorance and stupidity, because Yamantaka is the ultimate manifestation of wisdom. And in fact, you'll see if you look closely at the picture of the tanka, that there are three heads that he has. The big bull's head, which is the main head, and above it a smaller head, and above that a yellow head at the very top. The yellow head is Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom, which is Yamantaka's very essence. He has a gazillion arms all around, each one of them holding a different implement. They signify his skillful means, his skill and means, his ability to deal with the world. There's also a small figure at the very top of this tanka. And this is what happened. I'll just give you this story. This isn't really worthy of the teachings, but it's fun. In the early days, very early days, I traveled with Trungpa Rinpoche first to the Midwest. He was on a speaking tour going to different places, including colleges. And we went to New York and he spoke in some colleges there. And we had heard about this museum out on Staten Island. It's called the Jacques or the Jean, I can't remember, it's Jacques or Jean Marchais Museum of Tibetan Art. And Rinpoche wanted to see it. So we made a trip out there. I arranged, it was caretaken in those days, we're talking 60 years ago, by a couple of old ladies. And they opened the museum up for Trungpa Rinpoche and turned on spotlights throughout. We just wandered from one spotlight to the next looking at what was there. His comment was that it was typical of a collection of Tibetan art collected by a Westerner who really didn't know what he was doing. And there were things, he said, that were quite good, and there were things that were just terrible. Because this Westerner, Jacques Marchais, Frenchman, who went over to Tibet in the late 1900s, he didn't know what he was looking at, and he just took whatever he felt like taking. At one point, I became fascinated with an image. It was a statue made out of bronze. It stood about 3 or 4 feet high off the floor, and it was Yamantaka, a solid bronze statue of Yamantaka, utterly voluptuous, round, all the implements that he's carrying. It was just wild. And I asked Trungpa Rinpoche what it was, and he told me, and then we moved on. About a year later, at Rinpoche's encouragement, I got married to a woman named Christy Cashman. But just before the wedding, he gave us presents. He gave Christy a statue of a Buddha, and he gave me a tanka of Yamantaka, the very one. And here it is. It's on my wall. It's been on my wall now since 1973 or 4, whatever year it was we got married. So Yamantaka has been a big part of my life. He's always been on the wall, and he represents victory over Yama, victory over death, wisdom that is so incredibly wise that it conquers death. The other tanka, which you will get in chat, is the one you can see directly back here above my shoulder, black. I bought this at a teaching many years ago. There was a Tibetan fellow who had brought a lot of things out of Nepal and Bhutan and Sikkim, and he sold this, and I bought it. And what it is, it's the Wrathful, I seem to be drawn to Wrathful, huh? It's the Wrathful version of Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava had 8 manifestations. The one that you're most familiar with is this peaceful manifestation, and it sits here on my shrine in a statue form. He also had a wrathful manifestation. Its name is Dorje Trollo. Trollo means wrathful one. Troll means mad, angry. Trollo means a wrathful individual. And Dorje means indestructible, adamantine. So this is a tanka that I bought years ago. It's all black. That's another style of tanka. When you get wrathful deities, they can be painted black. And there's a term for that. I forget what it is. Nakpa? Do you remember, Michael? I think it's something like Nakpa. And this guy is all black. Dorje Trollo here. So I, as it turns out, as I read this chapter, realize now I've always been drawn to the wrathful deities, which is understandable. There are 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. 42 are peaceful, 58 are wrathful. In the Nyingma scheme, this is Nyingma, pure Nyingma. And both of these guys are in that scheme, especially Yamantaka. Yamantaka is actually, in the Nyingma scheme for the Vajrayana path, there are the 3 outer and the 3 inner yanas. The 3 outer yanas are Kriya, Upa, and Yoga yana. Kriya yana, Upa yoga yana, and Kriya, Upa, Yoga yana. They are rarely taught. What's mostly taught are the 3 upper yanas, which are Mahayoga yana, Anu yana, and Ati, or Dzogchen yana. In Mahayoga, the first of those 3 inner tantras, Mahayoga, it's ruled by what are called the 8, E-I-G-H-T, the 8 Haruka, here we are, Harukas, logos, symbols, of which Yamantaka, the conqueror of death, is one. And there are 7 others, which maybe we'll study someday. I've never studied them. But it's very fierce and beautiful stuff. Okay, so now I've sort of given you the context for all this. This is Vajrayana. Welcome to the world of the Vajrayana. So, I'm just going to look at my notes here. This is the vision of the wrathful deities, Yamantaka over here, is the culmination of the bardo of Dharmata, the bardo of reality. There are 58 wrathful, 42 peaceful. Before describing the visions in detail, the text recapitulates the reasons for reading these teachings, and these teachings are read to the dead person. Person dies. You're reading these out of the Book of the Dead, the Book of Liberation, the Tibetan Book of Liberation and Dying. And they're of vital importance to practice them during life. Although these are no different in essence from the peaceful Buddhas, their appearance can be horrifying to someone who has never contemplated them before. They're really fierce. The consciousness of the dead person, and you'll see when you go to chat and you pull up these pictures that I've sent you, the picture of Yamantaka, he's a piece of work. He really is. I have a close friend here who's an early student of Trungpa Rinpoche, Michael Bob King, spending a lot of his life in retreat now, getting ready to die. And he is very hopeful that when he does die, he's going to the bardo of Dharmata and will meet all of these guys, these wrathful deities, because they are easier to relate to and get teachings from and awaken with than the peaceful deities. They're more recognizable, they're more like friends, even though they're utterly scary, all of them. So, the consciousness of the dead person is also becoming more and more bewildered and exhausted as they die, as the experiences of the bardo continue without being recognized. So the sudden fear aroused by these new visions is likely to be devastating unless some sort of previous connection with them exists in the mind. And that's what we're doing now. We're establishing a connection with them. By trying to escape from them in panic, one will fall headlong toward rebirth in samsara. That's what they're just sitting there watching people fall away from them. Further, if one reacts with horror or aggression These negative emotions will propel one in the directions of the lower realms. So you really would like to make friends with these wrathful guys. Be like Bob King, who's looking forward to meeting them. I'm trying to conjure that one up. I mean, they're just wild. It would be fun to meet somebody that's this crazy. On the other hand, if there's the slightest glimmer of recognition, the intensity of the situation actually helps to focus the mind. Through sheer terror, one takes refuge in that glimpse of something familiar without being distracted, and so one attains the least partial liberation and reaches a higher state. At such a crucial time, only previous familiarity with the wrathful deities will help. Otherwise, their ferocious and horrific appearance will be misunderstood by those who do not know them, and that's us. So we want to meet them, because in death, you will meet them. And if you can relate to them, if you can relate to them as helpful and friendly, they will be of great help and great friend to you in death. And then the text says, now, if one does not meet with this kind of teaching, even an ocean of learning will be no use, and one will go on wandering in samsara. Even great teachers of philosophy and scholars, much less ordinary people, who do not recognize will go on wandering in samsara and escaping from their fear, terror, and panic. They will fall into the lower realms and suffer misery. But yogins, that's us, and yoginis, here we are. You are a yogin or a yogini, depending on your sex, who practice the secret mantra. That's Vajrayana. Even if they are the lowest of the low, will recognize these blood drinkers as their own chosen deities as soon as they see them, like meeting old friends. Oh my gosh, this is so important. This is what's going to happen for us when we die. So they will trust them and merging inseparably with them, become awakened. Become awakened because they are awakened. The essential point is that in the human realm, they clearly meditated upon these blood-drinking forms, because they drink blood, these guys, these Harukas, made offerings and praised them. And even if they only looked at their painted and sculpted images, they recognized them when they appear in the bardo of Dharmata, and the individual will attain liberation. This statement is the principle of crazy wisdom and the charnel ground. The charnel ground is the place where, in India, there are still charnel grounds, hard to find anymore. But it used to be that when a person died, if they didn't have enough money, a Hindu, let's say, didn't have to be a Buddhist, if they didn't have enough money to be cremated, the ideal was that your body would be taken to a cremation ground, it would be burned, and that cremation ground should be either along the banks of the Ganges, or it should be along the banks of the Ganges. And in fact, when I went to India many years ago for the first time, I went to the Ganges, to the place, the ghats, they're called, they're terraces that go down to the river for a mile along the banks of the river. And there are thousands of people on those terraces waiting their turn to bathe in this filthy, filthy water, the Ganges. And I went out in a little boat. I hired a guy to take me out in a punt. And I watched all these people, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, for a mile, these terraces, coming down to the river and bathing in this water. Now upstream, just upstream, less than a mile, was the burning grounds, where they burned the bodies of the people who, the families that could afford to have their loved one who had died cremated. And they would take them to this special place about a mile above the ghats, The body would be burned, and the ashes would be thrown into the water. So when these people were bathing, they were bathing in water that was full of the ashes of dead people. And there was, as I sat in that punt, I saw the occasional corpse that had just been thrown in the river and was floating down. And people are taking the water and they're putting it in jugs and drinking it, and they're bathing and they're soaping up. It's really a trip. And there are thousands of them on a normal day. And I said to my guide, I had hired this guide. I said to him, I said, wow, there's so many people. I said, is this a special day? There's so many people here? Thousands. And he said, oh yes, very special day. And I said to him, how many such days are there in the year? And he looked for a little while like this, and he said, oh, 300. This is India, boy. Someday, if you go to Delhi, you can just make this little trip down to the river. You walk through these narrow alleyways that are they're lined with beggars on both sides with their bowls and their hands out. And you thread your way through the beggars on both sides in these narrow cobblestone alleyways down to the river. And there you'll find people with little rowboats, punts, and you can hire one to take you out on the river, and then you watch all the people bathing. This chapter is going to take a while. So, this is India. It's raw, it's rugged, it's fierce. It's life and death, right in the palm of your hand, right there. It's not like here where everything is cosmeticized. So this statement is the principle of crazy wisdom and the charnel ground. Now the charnel ground is where they burn the bodies. And you can go to India, and they're harder to find now, but they're still there. These are fields where somebody who can't afford to do anything with the body will take the body out and cart it out and leave it there for animals to consume. And they do. Wolves and dogs come down and eat these dead bodies. And if they have enough money, they'll burn the body there. That's what a charnel ground is. So this is all about embracing wholeheartedly even those things we would rather avoid. The Vidyadharas, the enlightened ones, were unconventional. The wrathful deities come as a total shock. If the wrathful Vidyadharas were unconventional, yeah. The wrathful deities are part of our nature, just like the peaceful deities. They are within us, yet they also appear to us externally. They do not belong to the individual ego, but to our non-dual nature. So when you die, is an excellent chance you're going to see them, even though you're a Westerner. So we can interpret them and try to understand them from both points of view, within and without. Regarding them as external, these wrathful deities, they are expressions of the most intense awakened energy. That's what these wrathful deities like this guy on the wall behind me or Yamantaka are. The fundamental, self-existent, compassionate nature of the awakened state which sentient beings perceive as wrathful because of obscured vision resulting from ignorance and suffering. These deities are expressions of the same awakened state that is present all the time. And in the bardo, we are directly exposed to it, like the full dazzling light of the sun. The spontaneous display of enlightenment has not changed, but now we perceive it as fiercer and more threatening. Intensity and passion can often appear threatening even when no harm is intended. And this world is fierce. We become afraid of our own energy because it so often manifests in the distorted form of the 5 poisons and so easily turns violent and destructive. The 5 poisons, they're hatred, lust, envy, stupidity. What am I missing? Hatred. The hungry ghosts, feelings of hunger, of being poor.
Pride, jealousy, delusion.
That sinks. All of these. But there is no soft and gentle way to contemplate the total power of the awakened state. This is one reason for the awe-inspiring character of the wrathful deities, and they are awe-inspiring. Look at the pictures of this guy and imagine meeting him when you're dead. Another reason is that they forcefully show us, these images, the universal coexistence of destruction with creativity. We are constantly reminded that without death, there can be no birth. This is where everything that we live in now is cosmeticized. We drive around in our new car, we go to restaurants and are served food that's prepared for us. In this state, there is no cosmeticizing. It appears to us raw and rugged. The wrathful and deities embody this point, the equal taste of life and death within the sphere of wholeness. That's what the wrathful deities embody, and we are all going to experience this. At the same time, they do not merely represent universal principles. They are immediate and personal, the forces of our mind, my mind, those same forces that can turn into cruelty, lust, arrogance, and so on. But as the self-display of awareness, they represent that energy in its original, undistorted purity. Even the most extreme evil actions of which living beings are capable arise from energy that is pure in its basic nature. And that energy must be liberated. This is what the symbolism of the wrathful deities expresses. Beyond concept, it's stripping off these conceptual labels that freeze things, that make them unavailable, that make them seem unreal, plasticized. And we're going to experience it very, very fiercely and intensely. So the wrathful deities are not the shadow, but the pure energy that transcends the dualism of light and dark. Spiritual paths that attempt to suppress all negativity or pretend that it doesn't exist. You know, those nice little spiritual paths. Love and light, Rinpoche used to call them. Do not allow their followers to experience and recognize this energy, which nevertheless is still latent within them. The tremendous power of the wrathful deities is completely devoid of ego. It's devoid of ego. These guys here on the wall, they're beyond ego, none. Their entire and only purpose is to wake us up. That's what their purpose is. The wrath is the fury of those who have awoken and directed awakening at the forces that oppose awakening. I don't know, this is going to take too long. We're going to be spending a few weeks on this. He says, but in a world of confusion and uncertainty, clinging to our sense of individual existence, it is easy to misinterpret the overpowering presence of these wrathful deities. They may arouse our deepest fears and anxieties. They may disgust and horrify us so that we feel hatred toward them, or they may seem to be attacking us so that we can react with anger and violence. This can all happen at death. It can happen in life. All of us have experienced nightmare situations. Trungpa Rinpoche used to speak about how we solidify the experience of luminosity. Here it is. It's luminous. The pink of this cheek, the sound of this voice, the smell of dinner cooking, if there is. If we recognize this and let go into the openness, we can take part in the play of existence without being taken in by it. But if we start to believe in it, then the whole thing begins to seem solid, and we're living in this solid world. We react to the simple presence of the peaceful deities in various ways, trying to ignore them or turn them into objects of fear or attachment. It is just as important not to become attached to them as it is to be not frightened of them. The instructions are to feel intense longing and devotion toward the peaceful deities. When you die, you will see them, and you're supposed to feel intense longing and devotion. These are emotions that open up the heart and allow us to let go. They are not based on the swing between attraction and aversion, which is the reaction of ego. Ego is all about liking or disliking. If we are attracted to the peaceful deities and start to believe in them and their environment as externally real, we might imagine we have gone to heaven. Then they turn into wrathful deities to remind us of emptiness and wake us up. Whatever appears in the bardo, this space between death and rebirth, is a more dramatic, raw, and naked version of what happens during life. The wrathful deities use shock tactics. The time for gentle persuasion has passed. So brace yourselves. Me too. In ordinary life, it is very difficult for us to accept frightening or distressing situations as opportunities for awakening. It is difficult to maintain awareness under all circumstances, to see the Buddha nature in every living being, to accept things we dislike with equanimity, to react calmly to aggression. So hard, huh? And to show compassion to our enemies. Good luck. These are some of the situations in which we might recognize wrathful deities in a general sense. These are called the deities of secret mantra. Mantrayana is the normal Tibetan term for Vajrayana. Tibetans call the Vajrayana the Mantrayana. Mantra, you know what a mantra is? It's a sound, Om, Mani Padme Hum. And yana means vehicle. Mantras are widely used throughout the Buddhist world, but their secrecy is special to Vajrayana because of the importance of, and here's a word you should learn, Adhisthana. Adhisthana, through which the Guru passes on the power of these mantras. Adhisthana means blessing. It's a ceremony. It can be a ceremony. It can just be what happens between you and the Guru, but it's the blessing, the opening of your mind, the passing of meaning and reality. These mantras are available in texts, and so they're not completely secret, but they're always self-secret, in the sense that they cannot be effective without genuine adhisthana, the blessing of the Guru, and dedicated practice. How are we doing? 6:28, oh my gosh. What do you think, Michael? How long shall I go? Am I deadening everybody here? Dan says no. Judith says no. Lodro? Okay.
I think we're good to go.
This, you got to look at those two. Remember, there are 58 in the Nyingma scheme. There are 58 wrathful deities. Look at those two pictures that I sent you in chat. They're really something. And you can go on the internet and Google them too. You just won't find that the images you get when you Google Haruka are much. They're not just not as nearly as good as what can be found elsewhere. Okay. Mantras are widely used throughout the Buddhist world, but their secrecy is special to Vajrayana because of the importance of Adhisthana, through which the Guru passes on their power. For you to move forward in Tantra, you must receive Adhisthana. Adhisthana is the magic that opens up the world of Tantra. The wrathful deities are generally thought of as characteristically tantric and are often chosen as meditational deities by tantric practitioners. Their mantras and practices are kept particularly secret because they are so powerful and can easily be misunderstood. If the energy they release is used for selfish purposes, it only harms the practitioner and others. The text says that the best tantric yogins and yoginis, those who are above average, will be liberated the moment they stop breathing. How about that? The moment you stop breathing, if you're above average, while other accomplished practitioners of Maharudra and Dzogchen will recognize the luminosity in the bardo of dying. For them, the reading of the text is unnecessary, but for everyone else, when they die, it is extremely necessary and helpful. So if we've studied the text a bit, but not fully, having it read to us when we're dying is important and helpful. It reawakens the memory of any similar teaching one has received and any practice one has done or any realization attained in the past, so that what is taking place in the bardo becomes familiar and they're able to recognize that whatever appears is simply their own self-display. Or if they cannot recognize, at least it plants seeds for the future in the consciousness of the dead person, leading to a better rebirth. The seeds that are planted, combined with other circumstances, may ripen unexpectedly. This can happen to us, the people now in this room. Giving the impression of no previous effort or preparation, but there is always a hidden cause in the mind stream. This creation of connections is the secret of the great power of liberation through hearing. That's the Book of the Dead. So you have received, all of us, teachings in the past. You didn't get here by accident. No way. According to the Buddhist teachings, you've gotten here out of a predilection, out of preparation in the past that you don't remember anymore. But it's made your mind open to this, seeking this Tantra. As the text, the Book of the Dead, explains, if they, us, recognize during the bardo of dying, recognize the luminosity during the bardo of dying, they will reach the Dharmakaya. And if they recognize during the bardo of Dharmata, when the peaceful and wrathful deities appear, they will reach the Sambhogakaya. If they recognize during the bardo of existence, they will reach the Nirmanakaya and be born in a better situation where they will meet with this teaching. So really what we want to recognize is the luminous, magical quality of this world. This great liberation through hearing is teaching that enlightens without meditation. It enlightens without meditation. A teaching that liberates just by being heard. A teaching that leads great sinners on a secret path. So just by hearing this now, you're moving on. A teaching that severs ignorance in a single moment. A profound teaching that gives perfect instantaneous enlightenment. So sentient beings whom it has reached cannot possibly go to lower existences. Both this and the liberation through wearing, that's another text which we're not reading, should be read aloud, for the two combined are like a golden mandala made of turquoise. I've never read the meditation through wearing. Maybe we should try and find it. Now the text continues to point out the successive visions of the bardo. From the 8th to the 12th days, the male and female principles of the five families, remember? Buddha, Vajra, Ratna, Padma, and Karma, appear in the form of the five Haruka couples. These are male-female screwing. Haruka refers to any of the wrathful, blood-drinking deities, although it is generally reserved for the chief male deities. Its three syllables are interpreted, Haruka, Heruka, as emptiness, compassion, and their unity. Here the word has particular characteristics belonging to the Nyingma tradition. Trungpa Rinpoche observed that in the Nyingma Tantras, the nature of the deities is always more extreme than in other traditions. The peaceful deities are more peaceful, or invincibly peaceful as he described them, while the wrathful deities are even more wrathful and powerful. Francesca gives a detailed account of Rudra on pages 313 to 314, and there are different versions of his story, Rudra, although essentially it is an allegory about the perversion of tantric teachings. In the version I know, which is different than the one she recounts, Rudra was a student of the Dharma who turned against and murdered his own teacher. This is the most heinous of all crimes, to murder the teacher, because the teacher is the source of enlightenment, blessings, awakening. And that, in my version, Rudra did that. And so his name became a synonym with superego. Through his subjugation by the Harukas, Rudra became a protector of the Dharma as Mahakala, the Great Black One. In the Nyingma tradition, the five Harukas that appear during the bardo represent the basic wrathful principles of the mandala of Buddhas, so they're simply identified by the names of the five families: Vajra, Ratna, Padma, Karma, and Buddha. Samantabhadra, that's the all-good, and Samantabhadri, that's the feminine version of the all-good, also have their wrathful counterparts, the Great Supreme Haruka and the Wrathful Lady of Space, though they do not appear in Liberation Through Hearing. Her name is Akasha Space Dat Vishvari, Wrathful Lady. Okay. Then he gives descriptions of the Supreme Haruka, he's wine-colored and so forth, and of the Wrathful Lady of Space, his consort, who's described as dark blue, and so forth. The wrathful deities emerge from the brain, the seat of reason and intellect, as opposed to the emotional, intuitive intelligence of the heart, where the peaceful deities emerge. The wrathful deities express immense anger, without hatred, of course. The most immense anger that the enlightened mind could ever produce as the most intense form of compassion. That's the wrathful deities. It's significant that all the deities are actually described as emanating from the physical organs of the heart, throat, and brain, rather than from the chakras associated with them. Those who are in the bardo no longer possess their former bodies, but they experience the sensation of a mental body, formed from karmic links to the past and the future. Most important, the deities are an inherent part of our physical existence here and now. They are not abstract, not just visions or ideals. I'm wondering, there's a break in the text here, and it goes on to describe the 8th day of death. This is more of the bardo. That goes on for quite a ways. Yeah, quite a lot of pages here. Until the 9th day appears about 7 pages later. What do you think, Michael?
It probably makes sense to stop here and start next week. The 8th day is when the first vision of the wrathful deity starts. So, and yeah, right. There's a lot in this next section, and really, it creates a foundation for the 4 Harukas that follow afterward, because there's a lot of similarity in.
Okay.
So I think it makes sense to stop here.
And have a discussion.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a discussion tomorrow night too. Does anybody have any questions, complaints?
Thoughts?
Lodro.
And then Steve.
John, right now you said that Mahakala, it's Rudra, became a manifestation known as Mahakala. The way that I knew it is that Mahakala is the wrathful manifestation of Avalokiteshvara. Am I wrong on this?
I think there are different versions of it. I don't know. I can't answer your question. One version is that he's the manifestation of the enlightened version of Rudra. Rudra corrected. But definitely, yeah, I've heard that too. Avalokiteshvara.
I will say that I agree with you that if you Google Haruka, you don't get very good images, but if you Google Yidam, you can find some good things.
Oh, thank you.
Actually. And then I guess that my last question is, when you work directly with a guru and you take Abhisheka and you take Samaya, I've heard that you are given a particular Yidam to practice with. One Yidam for you to practice. When we are given a Yidam, are we more prone to find that Yidam at the time of death?
I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
You're muted, Michael.
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Usually when we work with a guru, sometimes I've heard that after taking Abhisheka and Samaya, the guru will give you a particular Yidam for you to work with. One Yidam that you work with visualization and so forth. At the time of death, instead of just the 58 and the 42 deities, are we more prone to make a connection to this Yidam or to see this Yidam at the time of death?
I think if you've done Yidam practice, the best, and you can remember that in the bardo and actually meditate on that, that would be a very good thing to do, as I understand it. The basic idea is, even though all the Yidams take, there are different forms. I mean, there are different. When you look at different tankas, paintings, you can see that they have different implements, different colors. But essentially, in essence, they're all really considered one and the same thing. So that making a connection with any Yidam is a connection with all Yidams. But there is one that you're likely to be, if you've done the practice, you're going to be more familiar with that form. And if you can remember that, that would be, that would be the best thing that you could do, I think. But you'll have some connection with all Yidams by meditating on any one Yidam.
What will happen is that your teacher, your tantric teacher, may, depending on what your path is, there are two main paths. One is the path that involves yidams, and the other is a path that does not. It's the path of Dzogchen, Ati. Yidam practice is called creation and completion practice. You create the image in your mind, and you dissolve it, and then you rest in awareness. That's the completion. In Dzogchen, or Ati, or pure Mahamudra, it's more emphasizing resting in that awareness. But Trungpa Rinpoche gave his students Yidam practice, creation practice. And he assigned us a particular Yidam, Vajrayogini. And you can see pictures of her on the web, Vajrayogini, her name is. And I think Michael and I, and certainly many others, have spent a lot of time with visualizing Vajrayogini, saying her mantra, doing the practices that lead up to that and follow after that.
That's very helpful. Thank you both.
Steve?
Steve.
You mentioned that extreme anger can become extreme compassion. Could you expand on that a little bit?
I don't think so. Can you, Michael?
Well, I think in terms of what's Vajra anger, if you think, I think that's the term that's used in the Sadhana Mahamudra. But the idea is, as he says, is devoid of hatred. It's anger, or think of it as an energy that is absolutely ruthless, forceful, with overcoming ego and any obstacles to recognizing the truth of Dharma. So it's not anger at a particular individual, but it's that kind of wrathful energy that clears completely any obstacle to truth, to whatever you want to, compassion, the Dharma. And in that sense, it's extreme compassion. But from a relative point of view, it's terrifying, because there are a lot of things that, ways that we may be caught up in worldly concerns of all kinds that, from the point of view of enlightenment, are not just meaningless, but actually can be obstacles to our practice. So that from that point of view, it can seem quite frightening, quite overwhelming, because there's no quarter given to any kind of ego trip or any kind of indulgence that gets in the way of waking up.
Right, thank you. That helps a lot.
And Trungpa Rinpoche sometimes manifested that way, so you had a sense of it.
So
Judy?
there are these two main approaches to practice, creation and completion. Creation is what Michael and I have been discussing here, like creating a visualization of Vajrayogini. You create her out of nothing. That's the completion part. And then you create the visualization, and at the end you dissolve the visualization back into clear awareness. That's completion again. Dzogchen, and I can't speak as much about Mahamudra, is almost completely completion. There's really no creation stage. It's all about resting in this open space. Dzogchen, Ati. So, but those are the two fundamental approaches of the Vajrayana, creation and completion. Would you say, Michael? Yeah.
And they're not contradictory.
No, they feed into one into the other.
But, as with certain things will appeal or have more impact for some people, and other things will appeal or have more impact for a different person. Judy?
Judith? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine or come to terms with or even conceive of anger without hatred or fear or other emotions. What would be this pure anger at nothing? At I mean, how does that go?
I'll tell you, I don't know if this will help. I'm not sure it does. I don't know if it helps me. Early on, one day, I was at what's now Carmichelling. It was then called Tail of the Tiger. And I was sitting in a little anteroom with Trungpa Rinpoche, and we were talking. Suddenly, we heard this commotion. And what was going on was down the stairs were coming Diana and another woman, actually the woman who eventually donated Tail of the Tiger to us Buddhists as a gift. But they were having a furious fight. Diana, Trungpa Rinpoche's wife, and this other woman whose name I can't remember anymore. And we're sitting there, Trungpa Rinpoche and I. Suddenly the door flies open and there they are in the midst of this argument. He and I had been having a delightful little conversation. Suddenly his eyes just popped out of his head. Moisture appeared all over his face. He had this terrific grimace, in his mouth, and he bellowed something, and it just blew the two of them across the hall. and then the fight stopped. The door closed. He turned to me and grinned.
What?
He turned to me and grinned.
Oh,
How the heck he did that, I have no idea. It's just like a switch.
but it had an object.
Yeah, them, their fight.
So what is pure anger? That's not pure. That had
I think
an
it's pure.
object. It was and a purpose. It was a display of fierceness or whatever. But what are they talking about? Pure anger. I mean, when I get angry, there's annoyance, there's frustration.
Maybe you could think of it like weather.
That's not so pure.
Maybe you could think of it like weather. Thunder, lightning. Things happen.
I think one thing you can't conceive of it is because it is inconceivable. But let's just say it's anger with no solid idea about what the other person is. It's just wake up now.
I think that's what was happening with Rinpoche and Diana and Carol, I think her name was. I remember I was just scared to death. Like that. And then he turns and he looks at me and there's this mischievous smile on his face. Oh my mackerel.
So in other words, he was using the appearance of anger without actually being angry, just
I don't think so. I think it was all sort of natural, all built in, part of the flow.
I have a related aside, I think, if that's okay.
Who's speaking?
Lola. It's Lola. I'm sitting outside in the dark, so I'll just have my camera off. Um, but if we're talking about wrathful deities, these are not people. They are not necessarily like, they don't like have personalities per se. So it comes across to me as like more of an energetic quality. And the way that I can like see that experience happen in the relative world is like when causes and conditions are such that the only choice the person has is to wake up. You know, it's kind of wake up or die kind of scenario. And so that has like the quality of like a pure sort of anger, like this the energy that through intensity has the power to wake up consciousness. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's just what I'm thinking.
Hmm. But also there's a you that we keep talking about when supposedly we have shed all of the things that would be a you. That this is pure consciousness going through these state or purified consciousness, devoid of ego, devoid of you. And yet we would have with us some, I don't know, some grain of the teachings in our whatever it is, consciousness that goes through the bardos. I find that confusing.
Sorry.
So what is it?
What is
How can it be?
I don't understand the question.
The question is, we keep talking about you have studied a certain amount or whatever, and in previous parts of the bardos, you've shed ego, you've shed just about everything, and what's going through the bardos is a consciousness, or what do we say?
Well, then
A
you haven't shed everything because the
pardon?
consciousness is, then nothing has been shed if the consciousness is going through the bardo.
Nothing has been shed.
No,
Oh,
because the
so
consciousness,
there is your individual characteristics still clinging to you.
well, if you've got a consciousness, there's still a sense of self.
Oh, there is.
That's what consciousness means, right?
Um, I suppose so. Or is there?
I think you're going to have to think about this and clarify this question because we're not going to get anywhere with it tonight in the 1 minute less remaining.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll try and clarify it.
So shall we put up the closing chants?
Sure.
Michael, are you going to or should I?
I can do it.
Okay.
All right, so we'll close by dedicating the merit generated through our practice and study.
Dedicating the offering too.
Oh, we recited that before.
I don't think so.
Right, well, we can do it again. So we'll dedicate the offering and then dedicate the merit. Assemblies of oceans of Samaya bound, accept this offering, gift of Torma. May we yogins with our disciples obtain lordship, freedom from disease, long life, glory, fame, good fortune, and all great and vast enjoyments. Grant us the cities of the pacifying and enriching actions, and so on. Samaya holders, guard us, support us with all the cities. May there be no untimely death, illnesses, or obstructing spirits for us. May we have no nightmares, ill omens, or bad dealings. May the world enjoy peace, have good harvests, abundant grain, expansion of Dharma, and glorious auspiciousness. Accomplish whatever mind desires. By this merit may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.